Today we're going to be continuing the tier list series with the Syndicate Bronzes. Now, for the record, Syndicate is my least played faction. I know how many games I have with it, but it's less than 1,000. So let's just get into the tiers here real quick here. So we have Excellent. These are cards that are played often across the faction or deck defining for good decks in the faction. We have Good cards. These are played. You see them in decks. You know, they're pretty good. Okay cards are playable. You can consider them. There's usually better choices. They like either fit into one very specific deck, or they're not that great in that deck, or these are like for bronzes, like things you might consider playing one of or something. We have niche cards. These are rarely seen, but they have their moments. These are like very specific cards. Usually cards go in here if they're like a key card in a low tier deck, for example, or they're very good in certain metas or against one specific card, but situation doesn't come up very much. But if you think it's going to come up, it might be nice. Weak cards are not generally played. They could be with a buff. These are cards that are like, they're not particularly good, but you could see like there's some potential for them. And then we have bad cards. These are cards that are terrible, absolutely have to be buffed. No one wants to play these. And meme cards are absolutely atrocious. No one ever wants to play this unless you're trying to have some fun with it. These are cards like that maybe can't be buffed, or they need so many buffs that it's ridiculous. Like a design issue or something. So those are the tiers, and we're going to change it up today. Today we're going to go by the order the cards are on the Gwent website. I don't know. I just felt like it. So we're going to start off with Townsfolk then. Changing up on you guys. So Townsfolk's a 4 for 6 as a human. Whenever you gain coins, boost self by 1. So this is there's a lot of these 6 provision engines that have more than 1 point per turn potential. Townsfolk is probably one of the, I wouldn't say the best. It probably is one of the best bronzes in the Golden Necker Syndicate decks. The Golden Necker one, where like you infuse with the Treasure Huntress and you get a bunch of coins that way. It is probably the best deck in there. Yeah, I think we'll go ahead and grab Townsfolk and drop it in Excellent. I actually think it's deck defining for that. It is like you make the deck of the Golden Necker Syndicate with the idea of you infusing a bunch of coins or have coin generation, and then you make Townsfolk and you Igor and make a whole bunch of Townsfolk and they get a ton of points. So I think it is actually super, super good. Like it's the key card in that deck. This has the ceiling on this is insane. You get a ton of points from this. Next up, we're going to go in here with Fallen Knight. So Fallen Knight here is a 4 for 6 with Veil Intimidate. It's been buffed, nerfed, back to where it used to be because the buffs were silly. But 4 for 6 with Veil Intimidate, and it gets a point for each unit you spawn when you spawn units. This has a massive ceiling. Obviously, it was intended to be a Firesworn card because they spawn guys. But the fact that it has Intimidate means it gets points from crimes. Crimes can spawn guys. There are a lot of hybrid decks where you just play like Cyrus and some Firesworns, but mostly crimes, and just spam Fallen Knights. Because the fact that it's a Veil engine means it can't be locked. The fact that it can get more than one a turn is really insane. The fact that you can spawn point things off leader for points, it just is a ridiculous engine. One of the best engines. It is, honestly, for a while, it's one of the best cards in the entire game before it got its nerfs reverted, or buffs reverted, I should say. So overall, Fallen Knight is completely deck defining for Firesworn, and it was deck defining for other decks too before it got its power put back in line where it should be. So it's going to fall right into the top tier once I find it. So this is, there you are. I knew I saw him down there. Next up, we have the Purge. This way, I'm doing it this way, so I don't have to type all the card names in. I just have to find the pictures. I'm not sure which one's faster. There's a little bit of lore there for today. So Purge, 5 provision special. It's a crime. Damage any unit by 3. Increase the damage by 1 for each witch hunter you control. Deathblow places a bounty on the highest power enemy. So crimes are like the main. Crimes are good. I think actually all of the Syndicate specials are crimes. No, not all of them are. I don't think Bank is. There might be some other ones that aren't crimes, but most of them are crimes. Unlike, say, in some of the other factions where they might have like a bunch, or the new tag and a bunch aren't. Most of the Syndicate ones are crimes. The crimes do have benefits thanks to leaders and interactions with things like Intimidate. So most of them are going to be crimes, so I won't mention it too much. Like I mentioned the warfare component for a lot of the Northern Realms ones, because it's pretty important. I won't mention crimes too much for these after this card. But overall for this, 3 damage is not very much. 1 for each Witch Hunter. So 2 Witch Hunters, you're doing 5 damage. The Witch Hunters are generally just, they either give you damage themselves, or they have some kind of, I guess the best way to play this is like you do Witch Hunter, just Witch Hunter, because then you get the bounties out, and then you can play off of this and put out more bounties. Really, it's just too expensive. The 5 provisions makes this card not really worth considering. It's just too expensive for what it does. 3 damage at a minimum. Like Hysteria already does that. Hysteria already puts out a bounty. and then Hysteria has the double damage on something with the bounty, so there isn't really a reason to play Purge. It's pretty bad. Like, I think if this is 4 provisions, we might actually see it considered, but the fact that it's a payoff to having Witch Hunters, and Witch Hunters, if you have a lot of Witch Hunters, you're already probably killing stuff, so it's just not very good. Next up, we're going to go in here with Open Sesame. This card's going, everyone knows this card's going at 5 provisions. So 5 provisions, profit 5, 5 for 5 coins. And when it's in your graveyard, it has 6 counters. And when the counters go away via you getting down to 0 coins 6 times, it gives you 4 back. So it's 9 coins, it has carryover, 9 for 5, 4 of which is carryover. Their coins carry over. Coins are generally worth more than a point. Everyone knows this card is absolutely insane. This is the heart and soul of the Acherontia decks. Whenever this card is nerfed to 6 provisions, that deck dies. Whenever it's at 5, it's pretty strong. So we're just going to grab the Open Sesame here and drop it right into the top tier. And there we go. Starting off strong here. Next up, we have Eavesdrop. So Eavesdrop's a crime. It's actually a blind dice card, which is only really relevant to Sigi. And it's 5 provisions, 5 coins from 5 profit. Draw a card, move card from your hand to the bottom of your deck. This card is just all right. Like 5 for 5 coins. Like the coins can be worth more than 1 each, but they're not worth like 3 each or something. Usually like 1.5 or something if you can get good value. 2 if you have like a cooldown or something, take good advantage of it. And then drawing a card's like, all right, it's not too bad. You can take advantage of that. Cycles your deck. The card goes on the bottom that you put back, so you can bottom deck something like a Flying Redanian. But generally, this card's just all right. I'd say it's an okay card. You can play it. Usually, I prefer other crimes, but sometimes you sneak one of these in there. Next up, we have the Payday. Payday's a 5 provision special. It has 5 damage. Every faction has one of these, I believe, except Monsters. I think Monsters has the 4 damage one. So Payday, 5 damage. And then get a coin for each point of excess damage. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. The extra coins from Overkill are pretty nice. Like sometimes you hit something that's 4, get a coin back. You usually get a coin back if you're playing this in something like Pockets. So generally this is just a pretty good 5 damage removal. The thing is for Syndicate, Syndicate has so much damage, they don't really need the extra damage from Payday. So I'm going to put it in okay. Like it's not a bad card. You can include it if you want more damage. Or say like you're playing a deck and you have a spare provision, you can put in a Payday over a 4 provision crime. But usually I think the 4 provision crimes are sufficient. You don't really need this, but it's not bad. Next up we have Stolen Mutagens, 5 provisions, another crime. You pick one of the 3 mutagens, they're right here. You can read them if you want, but basically there's damage, veil, and coins, or damage, boost, and coins. And you pick whichever one you want. If you 2 Salamandra units you control, you can play 2. If you're getting 2, it's actually really good value. You usually get about 9 points from this thing. You get the coins. It has good value if you have a bunch of Salamandras. Generally, having a bunch of Salamandras, though, isn't that common. There's generally better things to do. But Stolen Mutagens is a pretty decent card if you are ending up playing pretty heavily on the Salamandras. Just that deck's not too popular, so I'm going to say that this card is pretty niche. I don't think most decks would want to play this. And the decks that do play it, it is a really good card in those decks. Generally, those are the spamming poison decks where you have a whole bunch of abominations or something. But those decks aren't too popular, so I think I'll just give this a niche because it's pretty good in those, but that's not a very like top deck or anything. But like it's not too bad. Like it's pretty specific though, which is why it's going to go get a niche category. Next up, we're going to hit here the Pulling the Strings. So it's 5 Persian crime, profit 0. And the profit goes up for each gang in your starting deck. Unique gang, so you get up to 6 coins. If you're going to play this, you're going to play 6 gangs, so you get 6 coins. And then you increase the power of the Cs and decrease the profit by 1 for each gang. So if you have 6 gangs, you have profit 0, but Cs 6. This is the payoff for gangs, and is very good as a payoff to gangs. Where is Pulling Strings? There it is. This is just a really very strong card. It is probably the defining bronze for the gang deck. Now, gangs aren't like the best Syndicate deck, but they're not bad enough. They're not like low tier enough that I'd say this is a niche card. I'd say gangs are still pretty decent, so I think I'll put this up in the deck defining tier because you really like it is the defining card. That's what you're playing the deck for. Next up, we have Bloody Good Friends, 6 for 5. Insanity. Fee 1, give a unit bleeding. If it's boosted, you damage it instead. It's a Crown Splitter cut up. The fact that this has 2 gang tags on it just makes it good for gangs. It's Insanity fees. Like, it's 1 for 1 spending. It's got 6 for 5 body. That's not amazing. You're pretty much just playing this because it has the 2 tags. But that being said, that makes it good in the gang deck because you just kind of need cards that have those 2 tags like that. So I'm gonna give this a good. It's good in gangs. That's about it. Nothing else is gonna really play it, but in gangs it is pretty decent. And the fact that it's a crown splitter and cut up, you can get it off of an Overground Justice if you want to. Usually there's better things, but you can get this one. It's a pretty good target for that though. Next up, we have Tidecloak Hideaway. This is a Syndicate and Skellige card. I may not remember to mention all the dual faction ones here, but I'll try. We mentioned here, if you saw the Skellige video, this card has literally never seen play in the history of Syndicate. It may as well be a Skellige card. So in Syndicate, this is just never, ever going to see any play. No. This is a meme card in this faction. It's slightly less meme in Skellige, but in this one, it is just not finding a spot anywhere. It really, if we go back to a second, the Tidecloak Hideaway has the other problem. It boosts an ally by 1 for each pirate in your hand. There's not that many pirates in Syndicate. It just doesn't have any spot, so it's gonna go right in the meme tier. There's really just no deck that's ever gonna want to play this unless it's buffed insane and just like to have 9-point slam or something. So that's where it's gonna stay. Next up, we are gonna hit the Halfling Safecracker. So 5 for 5. It's a Halfling Crown Splitter. I don't think the Halfling tag has a single interaction in the entire game. It's interesting. Anyway, 5 for 5 and boost self at 1 for each crime in your hand. It is a Crown Splitter. If you're playing a crime-heavy deck, you can say probably have 4, maybe 5 crimes in your hand. It's a decent point slam. However, there's other payoffs for crimes like Intimidate. So generally, I think this card's just all right. I wouldn't see it seeing a ton of play. It did get nerfed at one point because I think it was 4 provisions and then it was super dominant. People loved it. But I think at 5 where it is now, I think it's just like okay. I think I'm going to give this one another okay here. I just don't see a strong argument to really want to play this, but it's a consideration. If you want a point slam card in your crime deck, this is probably one of the better ones. You'd probably pick it. Just that people don't usually choose that. Next up here, we have Mutated Hounds. We take a look at Mutated Hounds. 5 for 5 with an armor, Beast Mutant Salamandra. It's got deploy melee with 2 bleeding and ranged poison. You only use this for poison. The fact that Syndicate has a lot of poisons means this has some competition. The fact that you can get 4 poison cards that are 4 provisions, actually you can get 6. There's a lot of 4 provision poison cards. They just outcompete this. Generally, you don't play this unless you're playing all in on poisons. And even then, maybe it's a one of. So I think this card is just not particularly good. It just doesn't see play. There's so many other options for poison that the Mutated Hound just doesn't have a spot, really. Maybe if some of the other cards were nerfed, maybe this got buffed. I think I'm put this one in weak. If this ever went to 4 provisions, well, it can't, because that'd just be too much of a buff, I think. But if it ever got maybe another power, or if it ever ended up being a -1 power, -1 provision maybe. But at the moment, it's just kind of weak. You don't really want to play this. You have enough poisons without it that it's just generally just not worth it. Next up, we have the Salamandra Abomination. So 5 for 5, tribute 1, poison self. It's a Beast Mutant Salamandra. And whenever it's poisoned, it boosts self by 2, and Adrenaline 6, then your turn purify self. This is just... This card used to see a lot more play. Right now, though, it's 5 for 5, you poison self. You have to spend a coin to poison itself. I mean, sure, you could say you can save that from a leader, but we're not really going to consider that too much because you can save that every tribute card unless it's very specific. But you don't want to be spending a coin on this because if you spend a coin, it poisons self and boosts self by 2. So you're going to get then at the end of turn purify self. So you're getting a 7 point for 5 that costs you a coin. It's just not particularly good. You can say it's niche for salamander decks because they want to have this because it purifies itself. But really, I'm just going to say that this card is just a little bit weak. Sure, you can play it in Salamander, but do people really want to? I haven't seen this thing outside of maybe niche cases off of the locations that let you spawn it. I think it's a little weak right now. Next up, we might have to adjust here because I think we're going to have to keep scrolling. I don't want to do that. Let's just do... No, I can't open a new tab. All right, Salamandra Mage. I knew there's a reason I went from the pictures to this to type the names in. Salamandra Mage, 5 for 5. Human Mage Salamandra. Tribute 5, deal damage 3 units by 2 that are adjacent. And then when you tribute, you gain a coin. and Adrenaline 5 is gained 2 coins instead. So, you play this in decks with King of Beggars as an outlet to your tributes if you don't have enough, like 2 Shady Benders in this. 5 for 5, it's got Tribute 5, it damages 3 units. You're spending 5 coins for 6, so you're getting 11 damage for 5 points and 5 coins. It doesn't feel good, but it can be a pretty decent tempo card with King of Beggars. And the fact that you get coins from paying tributes afterward, usually if you're playing this, you might get like a coin or 2 after it because you want to have, usually you don't want to play this, like usually it's like a one-of card. Since it's a one-of card, it's not too uncommon though, because the coin refund on King of Beggars lets cards that have big tempo outputs on their tributes be considered for having a tempo play. So really, I think this card's either going to be a niche or okay. It's really only played for those reasons. I don't know here. Salamandra Mage. It's probably going to one of these two up here. It does occasionally see play in some of the King of Beggar decks, but not so much recently. I think that's more of an older thing. The problem with it is just the ratio of coins to value. Spending 1 for 1 is never great, and they have to have 3 units, but the fact that it is tempo is not too bad. And then it has the engine effects of getting you coins back later. I'm between okay and weak on this one. I don't quite think if it's a niche. It's not a niche card to me. I'm going to give it the weak, but I might be down. You guys let me know if I'm down on this card and it's actually okay, but I haven't seen this thing in a long time. Next up, we're going to start going back by the pictures here because I don't want to scroll for every card in existence. So we're going to hit the Acherontia Deckhand. So, Deckhand is 4 for 4, Profit 1, Vice 3, boosts health by 1. So you play this, you get 1 coin, and when you spend 3 coins, you get a point. This card is just not good. There's a lot of good Vice cards. This is not one of them. I've tried to make this card work so many times. The problem is, at 4 for 4, it gives you a coin. Okay, you don't want to play it for profit. There's much better profit cards. It has Vice. Sure, you need a spender out already, then you play this. If you spend, in order for this to be good, let's say you want to, for a 4 version card that's conditional to be good, let's say we want 8 points, right? Let's say we want, well, we'll be nice. Let's say we need 7. That means we have to spend 9 cards while this is on the board. If we want 8, we have to spend 9 coins while this is on the board, if we account for the fact it gives us a coin. That's just too much coin spending. It's just too situational, and generally this card is just really bad. The fact that it either needs to give more coins when you play it so that you can spend those coins to get to boosting, I think that's really what it needed, but that's not really something that can be changed, so I think actually let's drop it to the meme tier. This card has never been played. Other people like trying to experiment or something. Yeah, that's what we're going to go with. Next up, we'll do an Arena Endrega. That's what it's called. So we have 4 for 4. Deploy, gain coins equal to the amount an allied unit is damaged. All right, quick, guys. For real, though, please comment if you knew what this card did before you saw this, because it got reworked. I have not. I actually have seen someone. No, I'm just kidding. No one's ever played this. This card's so bad. Syndicate's the one with a self-wound, but this doesn't have dual faction with Syndicate. Or Scoia'tael. What am I talking about? Skellige has a self-wound. This doesn't overlap with Skellige. This is just... I mean, theoretically, I think the theory here is you combo this with Insanity. But the Insanity cards don't really... Like, they don't damage themselves that much, unless they're like Igor, in which case it's always dead. So this card is just never, ever going to see any play. It's so bad. Like, sure, there's a situation where, like, hey, I played Igor, and then I used its order, or they hit it down to 1, and then I got the 4 coins back. I could pay its order without, because I didn't have the coins otherwise. No, this card's terrible. This card's hopeless. Next up, we have Arena Ghoul. 7 for 4. You already like the stat line, right? Necrophage cut up, so it has a gang tag on it, which is kind of nice. And deploy at the end of turn, destroy self. Well, that's not nice. Tribute 1, cancel deploy. So the only time you'd ever play this is if you're playing it's off the books, right, with the coin tribute reduction. And then it's a 7 for 4, just straight up. That's not... There's just better things. Now, I think this card's actually not hopeless, because if this was ever 8 power, I think maybe we might see something there, because paying a coin for an 8 for 4, maybe that's all right. And then in gangs, you could have this big point slam guy, but it's just no. Right now, it's terrible. It's just terrible, unfortunately. What's up next? What's this thing? Assault? Yeah, it is Assault. So 4 Persian Crime, damage enemy by 4. If you control 2 Salamanders, damage by 6. So conditional 6 damage is nice. We've already kind of talked about, though, that having 2 Salamanders isn't like that common. But the fact that it's 4 damage for 4 baseline with a ceiling of 6, I think this card's all right. You don't see it too often, but when you're making decks, sometimes you think, well, my deck has a couple Salamanders in it. Maybe I'll run Assault over a different 4 Persian Crime. Maybe you don't want to play Poisons because it's just like Carapace, for example. This isn't like saying anything about the current meta, but just saying like maybe Veils are pretty popular. There's a lot of Purify, so if you don't want to run Poison package, maybe you want this, you could use it. It's 4 damage, gives you a coin back in line pockets. It's not too bad. Like, it's all right. I wouldn't normally play it, but I think it's okay. This is the Backstreet Chemist, I believe. We're really testing here how much I know the card names in Syndicate, because some of them are not too intuitive for me. So 4 for 4, Zeal Order, poison an ally and boost it by 2. Now, self-poisoning was a thing that kind of pushed for Syndicate a little bit. And there's a couple really good self-poison cards, like the Abomination. Oh, it's not Abomination. The Failed Experiment. The Failed Experiment is decent because you can poison stuff. The 2 brothers are really good. But other than that, like, Mutated, it's Mutant, I think, is the other one that spawns a copy of itself. There's a lot of synergies for this. But I just think Backstreet Chemist is not the way to go about it. I don't know if we're going to drop him weak for a second. Let's see. So he gives you 6 for 4 value with the self-poison. So the thing with the self-poison is that really requires a lot of synergy, and in certain matchups it's terrible. I think this card is bad. Yeah, we'll go with bad. I don't see any reason to use it. The value is just not there. Usually for stuff that injures your own guys or gives your own guy a disadvantage, like Self-Wound, there's some kind of payoff to it. Either you get good value, say like, or get like control. But in this with the self-poison, there's really not that much there. 6 for 4 is not good. It's just not good. On the other hand, we have a card here, Bare-knuckle Brawler. So we're going to take this card as it currently is in October 2024, which is a 4 for 5. This card varies wildly between different values. It was 4 for 4 originally, 5 for 5, all that good stuff. So it's a Dwarf Crown Splitter, has Intimidate, so when you play a crime, it gets a point. It's a little bit engine there. And then it's fee 1, damage the highest heart enemy by 1. If you can open with this and have coins in your hand, the opponent's stuff just gets blown out. But if the opponent opens up with a big tempo card, it hits the highest, so you're playing like against Self-Wound, they have Ogre or something, that just eats all the damage. It hits shields at the top level, hits armor like Nausicaa Sergeants. So it's not just raw damage, it's pretty specific, but it's really abusive if you go first and it sticks, because you can just spam coins at everything. Or you just set up the coins first, right? You just play like Open Sesame, then the opponent plays a unit, you're like, hey, I have like 5 coins now, I can just play this and blow their guy up. It's very, very strong. At 4 power, though, it doesn't see as much play as it did at 5 or when I was at 4 provisions. It is still very strong. It's a really good way to blow stuff up. In decks that have a lot of coins, think like some Acherontia decks will play it, stuff like that. I think overall bounties will like this card, but at 5 provisions, I'm just going to give it at 4 for 5, I'm just going to give it good. Whenever it's buffed, I think it'll go back up an excellent tier. But in the current state, like even in some Acherontia, well, even in like most of the Acherontia decks I've played against, I don't see it. I don't see it in bounty. So I've only seen it a few times this patch after it's nerfed, because it got nerfed this patch back to 4 power. But I'm going to put it in good, and just the caveat that whenever it gets buffed, it goes up here. But at 4, it's vulnerable to like 4 damage removal, so it usually does get killed. Next up, we have Beggar. That's not how you spell beggar, that spells burger. Now I want a burger. 3 for 4. Profit, that's not even how you spell burger, I just thought of one. This is the content you guys are here for. So 3 for 4, it's a human agent blind eye. The blind eye is actually really nice because it lets you play it with the crimes and gangs and such. Profit 3 and bonded profit 5. It's just a little bit weak. That's all it is. It's a little weak. 3 with 3 coins is not quite there, but I think if this gets a power ever, I think this would be it would be pretty good if it got like 4 power or something, but for now it's a little weak. Not much else to it. It's an interesting card. Next up, this is the Apothecary. The Blind Eye Apothecary, 2 for 4. Human Blind Eye, melee, heal, and range boost by 4. So if you play this thing ranged, it does 4 boost, and it has Tribute 0 combined both. I'm pretty sure this is actually Tribute 3, not Tribute 0. Anyway, so I went to the Gwent, Voice of Gwent here, and you can see it's actually Tribute 2. If we go back to one patch here, it was originally, if we go back here, it was Tribute 3. Tribute 1, and they nerfed it to 3, and they brought it back to 2. So it's currently Tribute 2. And the problem with this is, I'm pretty sure that the cards, I've only seen a couple cards wrong on the official Gwent database, and they're cards that got reworked, so I'm not sure what's up with that. But anyway, it's Tribute 2. The problem with this is you're getting 6 for 4 without having the heal, and paying 2 coins to heal. You don't have high base power in Syndicate, so at most you're going to heal 4. If you're going to heal 4 and get 4 points, that's 8 plus 2 is 10. You get an 8 for 4 if you pay 2 coins to heal something. It's just way too specific. It's just too specific. This card's not good. I'm going to give it bad. I think it's beyond weak. There's just not synergy in the faction. But I think if this was like maybe 4 base power, it would give boost 4. You can't do that. So like maybe at 3 base power, it could be an option because it would be Tribute in a Blind Eye card. But you could play it in like a gang deck as one of. But it's just too specific. Yeah, but I think there is potential for its value. So I'm going to leave it there. Next up, we have Bloody Good Fun. This is a 4 for 4. Well, 4 damage. Well, not exactly 4 damage. Let's read it. It's a cut-up crime. It's got 4 provisions. Profit 4. Spend all your coins and damage the enemy by the same amount. So if you have no coins, it's a 4. It gives you 4 coins. Immediately spends them all. Does 4 damage. This always spends down to 0 for things like Open Sesames in your graveyard, that kind of stuff. If you have a few coins up there, this is one of the few bronze cards that can actually have really high damage potential. If you already have 4 or 5, say you already have 5 coins, you play this, you do 9 damage. The downside to this is it always spends all of your coins. So if you want to kill something that's a 4 and this has you 4 coins, you're going to overspend. But you can use fees and stuff before this. I think it's just a solid, good card. I think it's just a good card for the faction. It's a good damage removal card. Close this down so I don't open that back up again. I don't think anything else will be broken here. Next up, we have the Casino Bouncers. Guys, I swear I know how to type. It's just the microphone's in the way of my keyboard. So I have to like move my hand around it. So Casino Bouncers, Insanity. 5 for 5 with V1. Summon all copies from your deck to this row. This is an interesting card. It's a deck thinning. There's not many deck things that are 5 for 5s or 5 provisions. There's like this and Crow Messengers and the Shield Maidens. So Insanity, V1, you can summon them out to your row. If you've won, you don't even need coins for this. It's just pretty much consistently summoning out through the row. The reason you don't see this too much is because Syndicate is already a very consistent faction. There's a lot of deck thinning and a lot of cards that tutor in Syndicate. They generally don't need the addition of Casino Bouncers. The only decks that want to play this are ones that are like combo based, like Salamander. And I think that this card's probably just going to fall into niche because of that. It's not necessarily weak. There are a lot of options that can compete with this, and it's not too bad. Sometimes you want to play this if you want to have more consistent combo decks, and not just Salamander. Other combo decks can play this too. But I just think that it's probably just going to stay in niche. If it wasn't for those decks that really want to have their combo set up, it would probably fall under weak. But it can't get like buffed too much because you can't be 4 provisions. They tried that, and then you can make it off of Eventide. So it kind of has to stay how it is, but where it is all right. It has a spot in these combo decks. Next up, we have Cleaver's Muscle. And for all these cards, I say this, try to say it once per video. We're rating the cards as they are if you were to include them in your deck. I'm not rating Cleaver's Muscle as spawning it off of Cleaver as like 6 points payoff for coins. We're rating this as Cleaver's Muscle. It's also doubling up with Scoia'tael. Funny enough, this is better in Scoia'tael than it is in Syndicate, which doesn't say much because this card is going in the meme tier. No one's ever going to include this in their deck. It's a 6 for 4. That's bad. The shield blocks a random ping damage. That's not enough value. It doesn't have any synergies. I mean, it's Crown Splitter, sure, but no one's ever going to include this. All right. 4 for 5, 3 profit. So it's a 4, it gives you 3 profit right away. And it has Tribute Spawn a Zealot. Now, Tribute Spawn a Zealot is 2 for 2 spending, but it's not too bad because you can use this to trigger like Fell Knights and stuff in Firesworn. And it has the fee to transform a Zealot to a Flaming Rose Footman, which is on paper a 1 for 1 spending. But if any of your Footmans have, or if any of your results have been damaged, it's 2 for 1, which is nice. It gives armor, which in certain matchups is nice, that you can stop random damage, or row damage, which really hurts you in a swarmy type deck like this. Overall, I just think this card's pretty decent. I'm going to give it an okay. Maybe up to good. It's a pretty common inclusion in Firesworn because you could transform the Zealots. But after the buff to one of the gold cards, you don't see as commonly. I'm going to give this guy an okay still, I think. I think it's fine. It's not my favorite card to play in Firesworn because Firesworn has there's a lot of options in 5 provisions. So I think this is usually like a one of card, which is kind of like our definition of like an okay card is. I think it's fine. Next up we have the Blacksmith. Coerced Blacksmith. So this is a 5 for 5 human crown splitter, profit 2. So 5 for 5 with 2 profit, and it's got fee 1 for 1 spending. Now this is actually a pretty nice spending because it boosts other units. So if you can protect other engines, it's pretty worth it. People don't like to, you can play this, people don't really want to kill it because it's not the highest value. But if they don't kill it, you play your engine after, kind of protect it. It's just a pretty decent card. This is, I think, the normal target for an Overriding Justice at the moment. And the fact that it's a gang means you can play it with it because it's a crown splitter. And it can then protect your engines. I just think this card's pretty good. I think it's a pretty good spender. I could see the argument for okay, but I think it's going to be up in the pretty good. I see this more often than stuff like these other ones. We're not ranking them within the tier, so I don't know why I'm moving them. Next up, we have the Confession Extractor. Yeah, Confession Extractor. Profit 4, counter 3, 4 provisions. When in your graveyard, whenever something gets a bounty, you do a damage to it. The problem with this is ping damage on bounties isn't great. Like, usually you want to be able to do a bunch of damage on your cards on the board. The value technically is there, right? This is 7 for 4 total value, 4 profit. Coins can be worth more than 1, sure. And then you have the 3 graveyard damage, so it's technically carryover. It's just not the best type of carryover. And if you're playing bounties, which I've played a decent amount, I usually find I want the 4 Persian cards to like give out bounty or do damage, like actually do damage. So I think this card's not like, it's obviously a 4 Persian special. I think this card's pretty meme, unfortunately. Like, there's just so many good 4 provision crimes. There's not really a choice to run this. You can play the damage ones. You can play the ones that give out bounty. I just don't think there's a reason to play the Confession Extractor. The only real good outcome for this is a card we'll get to in a little bit that we'll talk about. Actually, maybe we'll talk about it next. We'll see. Is the one where you give something bounty, it takes 2 damage. If you have Confession Extractors in your graveyard and you're putting out bounties and you're doing 2 damage that way, this is doing damage. You can kill stuff without playing cards. That's kind of neat, but that's not like a great way to play the bounties in general. So I think this is going to still fall in the meme category. Next up, we have Congregation. This is a pretty fun card. So Congregation is a 4 provision special. Firesworn crime, spawn 2 Zealots. If there's already Firesworn there, spawn 3 Zealots. This works incredibly well with Fallen Knight. This actually boosts Fallen Knight by 4 points because you get 3 cards out, and then you get the crime tag. But outside of this, this is one of the most important cards to have in Fireswarm Sworn. It just gives you 3 guys, and that's really good for the deck. This card is actually really just played outside of Firesworn in the Fallen Knight spam decks too. I don't think it's quite deck defining. I'll give it good though. That's a good card. Next up we have, I mean sure Firesworn's not the best deck, but I don't think it's like trash tier. It's alright. This is the Courier. So next up we have the Courier. This is the Nilfgaard crossover card. 5 for 4, Human Agent Blind Eye. And moves stuff from the, look at 3 cards from your opponent's deck, move 1 to the top. You can play this in Nilfgaard. We talked about it there for Hyperthin. This card is not going to ever see the light of day in a Syndicate. It's already a consistent faction, and there's no synergies with it. Next up, we have, what is this one called? I guess Cleaver's, not Cleaver's Muscle. This is the one, you can already tell when I don't know the card's name, generally it's not that good. But we have, does 3 damage. What are you called? Ah, Crown Splitter Thug. That's right. Crown Splitter Thug. 3 for 5 that does 3 damage on deploy with Intimidate. This card is bad. So the problem with this is 3 damage on a 5 provision card is not cutting it. That's 6 total value, and 3 damage isn't really enough to kill most stuff. So you don't want to do this. And the Intimidate tag, sure, it has an engine tag on it, but a 3 power engine just dies. It just has too low power or it's too expensive. It's just bad. This card absolutely has to be buffed. It might actually see some play if it gets buffed, but right now it's not nowhere near good enough. Next up, we hit the Bonded guy. The Cut Up Lackey. So 5 for 4, Human Cut Up. Whenever you play a crime, damage a random enemy by 1, and Bonded, damage it by 2. Now the problem with this is that if you're doing 1 ping damage per crime is alright, like you might get like 3 or 4 points in a round, maybe 5. But ping damage isn't that valuable. That being said, if you do play 4 crimes with him out, you're getting good value. With the Bonded effect with Bonded is pretty strong. The problem with it is you don't want to play 2 bond. Like getting 2 of these out is pretty hard if you're not using Seniors. So if you're not playing Senior, no one really runs this. But if you are playing Senior, you can and make a deck around that. But just putting this in your deck, people don't really do this. I think this card's pretty niche. I'm not giving it weak because you can build really heavy crime decks where you can play like these and Senior, and then you can play like Mushy Truffle and get more. I wouldn't really recommend doing that, but it is something I've seen done for like a fun deck. So it's going to fall in there like a niche card. Next up, we have Dip in the Pontar. 4 provision crime, Tidecloak crime, and it has 3 profit and 3 damage. This is okay. It's pretty straightforward. You're technically getting 6 value. 3 damage on a damage card isn't amazing, like we talked about. It doesn't really kill stuff. But the fact that it gets you 3 crimes, you can argue you can play it for value in something where you're playing Line Pockets or whatever. It's all right. Usually you play other cards over this, but it's not too bad. Sometimes you might want to play this in your deck. Next up, we have the Eternal Fire Disciple. 3 power, 4 provisions, 2 profit, spawn a zealot on its row for 1 coin, cooldown 1. So this is a 2-for-1 spender that comes down with 2 coins. So you play this, you get 5 points right away, and then you have 1 coin left over. That's pretty good, actually. And the fact that it's a 2-for-1 spender, it actually gets a ton of value if people don't gill it. This is a good card. Disciple's just a good spender. 3 is pretty vulnerable to damage, but if he does die, you've gotten 5 points and a coin already, which isn't too bad. Like for an engine that's already been killed, that's not too bad. Like that's decent setup. Next up, we have the Inquisitor. 4 for 4, Human Firesworn Cleric. Destroy an allied Firesworn token and boost self by 4. And then 2 turns, you spawn a copy of the token. So after 2 turns, this is an 8 for 4, because you get back the thing you killed, unless you killed a boosted token, which that's on you. But generally, this is pretty good. You can even get more than 8 points out of this if you kill a damage token or like a token with some kind of status effect on it. Just generally, this is a great card. And then if you bring it back from the graveyard, the timer will come back off again because it remembers what it destroyed. So overall, just a good card for Firesworn. It's actually got really great value on it, and it sets up some of their gold specials really well. So this is just a good card for Firesworn. So we're going to give it good. Next up, we have Eternal Fire Inquisitor. So 4 for 4. Again, Human Firesworn Cleric. We're searching Eternal Fire right now, so obviously these are going to be pretty similar. Wait, that's the wrong one. We want to do the one next to you, the Priest. Same tags, same stat line. Whenever you spawn 1 or more units, boost self by 1. Infinitely worse than Firesworn Fallen Knight, because if you spawn 3 guys, you only get 1 point. But that being said, it is an engine that can synergize with the spawning of the guys. Usually you don't play this. You don't see it too often. I've played it. I've seen other people play it. Overall, it just doesn't really compare to Fallen Knight. Generally, you're better off trying to get more Fallen Knights out, but you can still play. I think I'm going to give it an okay. It's an option, but usually I don't see people play that option. And Firesworn is not strong enough that just because it's occasionally in Firesworn, I'm going to throw it up in good tier. I think this card's all right. It's not too bad. Usually you see other ways to spawn tokens out, or like some way to protect your guys or whatever in 4 provisions, but this is an option. I do play it though. Does me playing it get elevated? No, not really. I think I'm just comparing it to this next to it. No, I'm going to give this good. It's better than this. Just because it gives you a second outlet for your Firesworn swarming. I'm between those. We're going to just leave it here for now, and we'll come back. Next up, we have Eventide Plunder. So Eventide Plunder is a 4 Persian crime. It's a Tidecloak crime. It creates a 4 Persian unit with a fee. Now, this is actually really deceptively useful. So a lot of decks want to play crimes because they have crime triggers. Like just line pockets is the obvious one. And this just lets you create a 4 Persian card with fee. The fact that it's limited to 4 Persian cards with fee, there's not that many 4 Persian cards with fee. If we go back and look here and search fee, 4 provisions, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There's only 7. We've talked about a couple of them already, but a lot of them are actually pretty good. So it gives you a limited choice, a limited pool to pick from, and a lot of them are good, and they're all going to spend coins. This is actually just one of the most widely played cards in the entire faction. And because of that, I'm going to drop it up in the excellence here. I think Eventide Plunder is amazing. It lets you see the better engine, the better spender at the time. Sometimes you get like the 3 worst choices, but then you're still spending coins. It does what it wants. It does what you want. It creates a spender for you while being a crime. That's amazing. That's really useful. It's just so useful across the faction. So many decks play it. Super cool. Failed Experiments up next, Human Mutant Salamandra. 6 for 4, good stat line. It poisons itself, which is bad, but it can then spend 4 coins to move its poison to another unit. Now, paying 4 coins to poison something is kind of expensive, but that's not too bad because you have other coin synergies. It's a proactive setup. So by having this on an order, it means if you play a poison from your hand, you can use this to kill something. It's actually hilariously terrible against other decks with poison, so mainly Scoia'tael if they're playing like a Harmony with the poison package or something, because you've already poisoned it and doesn't have to work for you or for them. But this is actually just it's very good in the deck that's good in. Let's go with that. You can play this in poisons. I'm going to give it a niche tier. In the heavily poison-based decks, this is a super key card. But outside of those, most decks want to play like 4, maybe 5 poison cards, and this isn't one of them. Like usually use like Fistic and Fistic Trafficker, which we'll talk about later because they're alphabetically pretty soon. But usually those are enough. If you're playing heavy poisons, though, you can play this, and it gets a lot of good value. So overall, I think this card's pretty niche. Remember, though, like I said, niche cards are not necessarily worse than the OK cards. So they're very specific, and that their decks are usually like on and off like meta. They're not like top tier decks. Or they're like top tier decks depending on the meta. Like everyone's tall or something, poisons are good. Next up we have the Fence. I have a lot of mixed feelings about the Fence. So Fence is a human pirate Tidecloak. It's 3 power, 4 provisions. That's all well and good. Deploy range, gain vitality to your coin count. So you play this range with 9 coins. It's going to get 9 points eventually. Assume you play this when you have enough turns start to go off. You eventually get 12 for 4, which is amazing. However, most of the time you're going to take a couple turns to build up that coin count. Maybe get like vitality 5. That's still decent, but it's going to go up to 4. Then I can kill it and remove the value. To counteract that, you tribute to boost self by the coin count instead. You could do that, and then you've spent 3 coins. So let's say you have 9 coins. You spend 3 to get a 9 for 4. Okay. Usually 3 coins are going to be worth like maybe 4 points maybe if you have a good spender. Maybe you do spend them 1 for 1, and it's worth 3 points. So it's either 8 or 9 for 4 if you're doing that. And obviously you can make it cost less with the leader, but I think generally this card is pretty weak. It's weak or okay. It's just not the best coin spender for tributes. Like there's better tribute cards than this. And if you're playing a tribute heavy deck, like you want King of Beggars, the fact that it's tributes 2, sure that's nice, but doesn't trigger King of Beggars that quickly if you're on tribute 2s. But I can see some options for it. Maybe you want to have a point slammy type card to use your coins. Generally, a coin spender is better than her for doing that. But she's not the worst thing out there. I would like she got a buff though. I think she would be a lot more playable. As it is, like she's like decent but not. Why am I in the deck editor? She's like decent but not amazing, if I had to say it. And she's decent while being specific to decks that want to play her. and there's not really that many of those. So I'm going to leave her there in the weak tier, I think. Although, like, if you're playing a gang deck, the fact that she's a Tidecloak gives you a little bit of, like, maybe you'd play her, but I generally just don't think so. Next up, we're into some Firesworns here. There's a good number of Firesworns. It's always one, like, deck within the faction has a whole bunch of cards that just has a whole bunch for its own cards. So Firesworn Scribe here is a 4 for 5. Human Firesworn Cleric. Range when you spawn one or more units, gain a coin. Tribute 2 boosts self by 2. So the Tribute 2 is just a 2 for 2 spend that gets you out of most common removal range. However, the Firesworn decks have trouble generating coins. They generally don't get many coins. So usually you don't spend the coins on this because you'd rather use the coins to maybe like spawn another token instead. But that being said, a coin every time you spawn a unit is an incredible refund. This is a very, very potent engine for Firesworn. And because of that, I'm just going to drop it up here in good. It's pretty good. You can make decks entirely defined by this, where you just spam out like 6 of these or something, and then you just spend 1 coin to spawn a token, get 6 coins back, use like other spenders. But that's a pretty niche deck, more of a meme deck, I think. So I'm not really consider that too much here. I think it's just pretty good. Next up, we have Fistic. It's a 4 Persian crime. It gives you 4 coins, and it does a poison. It's just really good. Setting up half a poison is nice. The fact that it's 4 coins also just means you can play this for the profit. If you're in like line pockets, just getting 5 coins is pretty good. You get the poison. Overall, you combine this with other things that do poison. It's just good value. It's just really good value. This is a really common card. I don't know if it's common enough for me to throw it into excellent, but it's getting pretty close. Like, this is one of the most common played crimes. That being said, I haven't seen a ton of it. That's because Syndicate's also like the least played faction, generally. I'm going to stick it in good, but I could see the argument to put it in excellent because it's played very, very widely across the faction. But I don't think poisons are very in at the moment, so I'm going to drop it down here. In certain metas, this is excellent because just things go tall. But at the moment, I don't see much going tall, so we're going to leave it in good. And Trafficker just falls in the same thing, right? You play both most of the time. This is a 3 for 4 that has human blind eye, which means it does have a gang tag, which is nice for gangs. And it has poison a unit. If it's all allied, gain 3 coins. So you poison an enemy. It's 3 for 4 with a poison is pretty good. There's other cards like that in the game. And then it has if you don't have a target you want to poison, you give yourself 3 coins, which is actually really nice. It has this other effect. You don't have a poison target out there. It's the same thing as Fistic, and they're both really good. Fistic's a little better because it is a crime and it has more profit. So this is a little better than this, but they're both pretty good at the end of the day. Speaking of pretty good, we've got Hysteria. It's a 3 damage crime for 4 provisions that gives bounty, so 3 damage bounty, and then if the target already has bounty, you deal 6. Conditional 6 damage. You generally don't want to use the conditional 6 damage though, because bounty decks have a limited number of bounties they can put out. So you'd much rather put the bounty out with this and kill it off with one of your other units. But it's just a really solid card for bounty. Bounty's alright. We'll give this a good. Not too much there. You don't play this outside of bounty, but it's a pretty good card in bounty. I wouldn't say it's deck defining though. Oh, what is this guy called? Keeper of the Flame. 4 for 5. Human Firesworn Cleric. That's a tagline you're going to see a lot. Deploy boost adjacent units by 1. Tribute 4 boosts the row. Its cost is reduced by each allied cleric. Now, if we're just looking at this, we're going to ignore the allied cleric for a second here. Just look at the value. 6 or 5 is terrible. The tribute boost a row by 1 means that you would have gotten the 2 points already from its deploy, which means this is adding 7 points to a full row for 4 coins. That means you're getting 11. Well, if you were to include 2 points here, so you get 13 points for 4 coins and 5 provisions. That's not too bad, but a full row is kind of hard to get. The tribute being reduced by 1 for each cleric is okay. This card just, I think, is a little weak. There's better 5 provision stuff in Firesworn. We're going to see there's a lot of 5 provision cards you can play in Firesworn. I think this card's a little bit weak. It's not the best thing for Firesworn, and it's very specific, and the payoff's not as high as you'd like it to be most of the time. 4 is pretty expensive because, like I said earlier, Firesworn does not have an easy time getting coins unless the Scribe lives. So it's kind of hard to afford the tribute, which means most of the time you're just playing for the adjacent ones. Even if you have the full row, most of the time you just don't have the coins, so you can't pay it, which is a little shame because it's an interesting card. Kikimor Warrior. Crossover with monsters here. 3 for 4, Insectoid Cut-Up. Not sure how you convinced a Kikimor to be in your gang, but they did. So order destroy an allied unit and spawn a Kikimor Warrior on its row. Now, this has actually, I remember this seeing play when it first came out, because the idea was you would, or Flying Redanian first came out, because you could destroy the Flying Redanian and spawn a Kikimor Warrior, and the Redanian would come back. But no one's ever done anything other than that, and today it's just a meme card in this faction. No one's ever going to play it. If you ever do try and something like that, there's so many squirrels around and control that this doesn't, you have no way to give this zeal, so it just kind of dies and doesn't do anything. And then you're relying on Redanian. It's just not a good combo. We see we have, what's this thing called? Line of Credit. 4th Precision Crime for Blind Eyes. Destroy an allied unit artifact. Gain 7 coins. Destroying an allied unit artifact. We don't have Death Wishes in this faction, really. The only good target is if you use like the Order on like the Salamandra Hideout. The other artifacts have like a resilience, so you don't want to do that. Or they have fees, or they have passive effects, and gain 7 coins. It's a good amount. 7 coins is a lot of coins. 7 coins is really nice. But there's no really way to take advantage of this other than hitting Flying Redanian. Or, as I have done, you can, we'll talk about Shady Vendor eventually, but you can, if you create this, you can kill a false Siri, you feel amazing. But that's about it. Like, no one actually includes this in their deck. This is a complete meme card. There's just no way to pay it off. There's no way to take advantage of the destroying an allied unit. And if there's no way to take advantage of destroying the allied unit, there's better ways to generate coins. Like 7's a lot, but you can get 7 other ways, or with some additional effect that doesn't require you to kill your own thing. Next up, we have Little Bird. This one's going to be pretty quick. Little Bird is a human agent, 5 for 5. It infuses itself with a gang of a unit in your deck, and then fee 2, boost an allied 1 for unit by 1 for each gang you control. It's going to have a gang. If you have a double gang out there, it's 3 for 4. This is also a defining card. I think we'll give this... Do I give this deck defining? I do. This is like key alongside with pulling the strings for the gang deck, because you get this up to 5 or 6 coins for 2. 5 or 6 points for 2. It's an amazing engine, absolutely amazing engine, and it gives you so many points. Just super strong. By the way, just remember that because I'm putting it in a deck-defining deck, deck-defining tier doesn't mean I think it's the best deck. These decks might be better, but I think these cards are very integral to this deck, so I'm going to put them both here. Lonely Champion. I like Lonely Champion. So 4 for 4 with 2 armor. Human Firesworn Knight. He's immune, so he's hard to kill. And he can destroy all of your tokens on his row and then boost himself by their power. So what you do with this, say your engines are popping off and you've got too many units, you have no row space, you play a Lonely Champion, put all those points into the Lonely Champion, you can start spawning guys again. It's a pretty niche effect. It's not going in the niche tier though. I'm going to give him the okay tier because he does go in Firesworn. You see an okay-ish amount of Firesworn considering how much you see Syndicate. At least I do. And it's an alright inclusion in the deck. It's like a one-of type card. If you think you're going to have a lot of over-spawning, you just play one of these in there, eat all your tokens up, and you're happy. Next up, Magpie. So keep double-clicking. Whatever. Magpie. So, 4 for 5, Beast Pirate, Profit 2, and it's got Fee, Spawn a Crown, cooldown 1. Now, this card was really awful for a long time. It's recently gotten buffed a decent amount. And now it's at 4 for 5 with 2. So it's 4 with 2 profit. That's all right. It's got V1 spawn a crown. Now what you do with this is you take advantage of this V1 spawn a crown to trigger your Townsfolk. You can then spend the crown to get a coin back. That triggers Townsfolk. It triggers infusions, things that get boosted when you gain coins. So I'm going to actually give Magpie a pretty resounding good. Like, it's not deck defining. This is mainly for Golden Necker crimes. Golden Necker crimes with the fires with the fall. Wow, it's mainly in Golden Necker crimes with Townsfolk, but you can also play outside of Townsfolk. Well, outside in like regular Townsfolk without Golden Necker. Although I really think Golden Necker is the best way to do it. It's pretty good in that deck, and that's a good deck. Like that's a really good Syndicate deck in my opinion, and it works really well in it. So it's gonna get good. It's a good card in that deck. Who would have thought the day happened? Oh, I just saw the next unit in my my positive mood has disappeared. What is this thing called? Oh, this thing. It's like mutant killers or something. If it's mutant killers, you guys gotta shout me out because I bet you guys didn't know this thing's name. Mutant killer. I added an S. I'm counting it. 4 for 4. Human mutant salamander deploy. Boost self by 1 for every poisoned unit on the battlefield. Okay, let's just go here. This card is straight into the meme tier. This is atrocious. Now the reason this is atrocious is let's think. What do we do with poisons? We put 2 poisons on 1 unit to kill them. Why are we spreading out poisons? There is no reason to put a bunch of poisons on a bunch of different units. Yes, you can self-poison a bunch of your guys. That's not a good way to play the game. That's a terrible deck. The self-poison deck is not good. You can play some of the good self-poison cards, but you're never going to do enough self-poisoning for this to be good. The only thing this works with is Salamander. Salamander needs you to use the Salamander and kill itself and then play it again. Because otherwise, you just get banished from your graveyard or something. No, there's no way to play this. This is not good. No. There's way better things in Salamander. This is not it. Speaking of the better things, let's just skip the mutant. People don't even... We're just going to mutant. 4 for 4, Human Mutant Salamandra. When poisoned, spawn a base copy. This is 4 points when it's poisoned. This is way better in a heavy poison deck than the Mutant Killers. Mutant Killers is way too specific, and then you're going to kill things with poison, so it's just anti-synergy. This is actually pretty niche to being a great card, well, at least a decent card in Salamander or super heavy self-poison decks, which are not a great deck, like I've said. But the fact that sees play in Salamander, which is a objectively very bad deck, but it's a pretty fun combo to pull off so people play it a decent amount. It's not... This is going to go in their niche because it's good in that deck, but it's the bottom of niche. It's so specific, but in the decks where it's specific in 4 points every time you poison, it's actually insane payoff. Like, this is an insane payoff for self-poison. Just there's no good self-poison decks. Next up, we have the Mutants Maker. 4 for 4, Human Firesworn Salamander. Deploy, destroy an ally unit, gain 3 coins. That's bad. Devotion, gain 3 coins. So, 4 for 4, 3 coins. That's really good value. That's about 7 or 8 points. That's what you want. Has 2 tags on it for gangs. This is a great gang card. Devotion's pretty easy. This is one of the best Devotion factions because it has the things you need. If you're playing a Devotion deck, what do most factions lack? Removal and consistency. Syndicate has both, so it's a good Devotion faction. And this is just going to be a good card. It's good in gangs. It's good in any Devotion deck if you want to play a unit that gives you coins. It's pretty decent. Next up, we have Oxenfurt Guard. I would say this is like a premier coin spender. So 3 for 4 with 2 armor, so he takes 5 damage to kill as a human soldier. It doesn't have any synergistic tags, which should tell you about a good amount about it. Fee 2 boosts chasing units by 1, and if your coins go to 0, it boosts them by 2. So this is just a spender, but it can be a 2 for 1 spender, and it boosts things, so it can protect them, and it takes 5 damage to kill, which is like, people don't want to kill this. Overall, this is just a good card. It's a good coin spender. One of the most popular coin spenders for the coin spending decks like Acherontia. Just good. I wouldn't say it's seen enough across the faction that it put into excellent, but it's a good card. There's like other spending options. Although I think generally this is one of the best ones for that deck. So I'm going to give this a good... Is it... We might come back and toss one of the coin spenders up here. And this is making a contention for it. Such a good spender. Next up, Naturalist, the other Oxenfurt card that's nowhere near as good as his friend. I think this is usually the worst of the 4 version fees you can get off Eventide. It's a 3 for 4 with 2 profit, and it's not great. Fee 1, give an allied unit 1 vitality. So it's a 1 for 1 spender that's limited by the amount of units you have. If you give out 2 vitality and the round ends in 1 turn, then you don't get this a second point. Generally, though, generally you can probably think of it as a 1 for 1 spender. You usually have enough units, but not always. Sometimes you see this and you have like 2 units. You're like, I can't spend my coins with this. The vitality won't go off. But generally, it's just like a subpar spender. I'm gonna give this a week. No, this is bad. No one includes this in their deck. I was about to say it's weak because you get off of Eventide, but I mean, we can't, like I said, we're judging these by putting them in your deck. No one's ever going to put this in their deck. This is bad. However, if this ever gets like a couple power or something, maybe you can consider it. The fact that there's no synergistic tags is an issue. The fact that it has no vitality synergy in the faction's an issue, though. Am I just going to be mean to this faction today? It just doesn't have synergies with the faction. It's purely a value spender. There's better value and there's better spenders. Yeah, this is no. And not even in bad, this is going to meme. It's just there's no synergies with it, and it's not value enough, and it doesn't spend well enough because you have to have like a bunch of units to spend. Peaches. 4 for 4, Horde 4, gain a point, and it has blind eyes. This is actually pretty decent. If you're playing a deck with Madame Serenity, this is a pretty strong card because if she pulls her out, you do include her in the deck because of that. It's pretty good if you want to play Passiflora because it's a blind eye engine, and that deck loves blind eye engines. Passiflora is not the best, but it's not the worst scenario, although it's I wouldn't say it's too far above being the worst scenario, but it's still pretty good. All the scenarios are pretty good in certain situations, but pretty straightforward engine here. It's pretty okay. Usually people just play one of it so they can pull it out with Madame Serenity. Sometimes they play two if they're going to play a more gang-based deck where having the blind eye tag on is useful. You're more often to see the two of these than two of the other cards Serenity pulls. But yeah, I think it's pretty okay. No, we'll give it good. We have to account for like, unlike other cards that spawn and create stuff, Madame Serenity does pull them out of the deck, so you do play it. We'll give it a good. We'll give it a good, reluctant good. No, we'll give it okay. It's between. I think I'll give it okay. Next up, we have our tribute friend. That didn't help. This is the movement guy. Payroll specialist 5 for 4. Human blind eye, has a gang tag, it's human. Tribute 1, moving it to the other row. So there are movement cards, but the fact this gives you a devotion movement option, this is not a very common card. The Tribute 1 move is kind of mean. Like, you don't want to have to pay a coin for it. It doesn't have Intimidate. I feel like this card should be a card with Intimidate, but it doesn't have it. This card is just not particularly good. Sometimes it shines because you needed a movement, but I just don't think it's good. Maybe if it had an extra power, so in like the blind in the off the books decks where you could pay one less for the tribute, it'd be a 6 for 4 with a move. That would be interesting. But I just think it's a little weak. Next up we have Pearl Diver. This is an interesting card. 4 for 4, Human Pirate Tidecloak, timer 3, 6 coins. So if your 4 power unit lives for 3 turns, well, 2 turns, because 2 of the opponent's turns, you get 6 coins. 10 for 4, 6 coins is amazing. But a 4 power card living for 2 of the opponent's turns, this is not going to happen. I actually don't know if this card belongs in meme or not. I think I'll leave it in bad. I think if it was like 5 power, maybe you'd have a little more consideration, but I don't know if you can do that because the payoff's so good, the 6 coins, but maybe you can. I just don't see any reason to play this. There's other ways to get coins that are less specific and don't require you to wait so long. Because one of the things with coins is you like to get the coins so you can spend them the next turn. It's because your coins to spend like 3 turns later. That's not really worth it. Then we have the Mage. Renegade Mage. 4 for 4. Human Mage Blind Eye. Deploy damage an enemy by 1. Tribute 1 damage by 3. The only time you'd ever play this is if the tribute doesn't actually cost you coins, because it's not good. 7 for 4 value is decent. 3 damage doesn't kill stuff like we've said. Usually just takes up slots you'd rather use on like a blind eye that did like the Fistic Trafficker or something. This card's pretty weak. It doesn't quite have the value you want. It's just, I think it like needs a power or something. It's just a little weak. It's not terrible, because the value's kind of there, but not quite. The value's only there if you don't have to spend the 1 coin, which means it's only really playable in off the books, and off the books don't really like this. Next up, we have the Assassin. Salamandra Assassin. So 4 for 5, Human Salamandra. Order, place a bounty, or deploy, place a bounty, order, poison the bountied unit. This is one of my favorite cards in all of the faction, because it brings together poison and bounty to let you build deck space around both, which we did pretty recently. Overall, this card is not the best card. I'm going to give it an okay rating, but remember, I really like this. So why this isn't okay, giving out a bounty is pretty useful for bounty. And order poisoning, if you get the order off, it's actually really nice because you have a poison and a bounty. That's pretty nice. If it just said poison bounty, be a pretty good card. But the fact that you have to wait for the order means that you usually don't get it. 4 damage is pretty easy to remove, but you still got the bounty then. It's just okay, I think. I think there's some better stuff, like the specials that do damage, that like you kill bounty targets. If you just want the bounty, you could play like a Witch Hunter or something, or a Slander. And most decks don't want to combine the poisons and the bounties, so it's kind of hard to fit them both together where you have enough bounty and enough poison to make a cohesive deck. But I think it's all right. You could consider playing it if you want to play like a Two Fistics or something in your bounty deck. Next up, we're going to hit the Salamandra Lackey. I love this card too. This is an interesting... There's a lot of faction-specific Purify cards. This is one I think is one of the most interesting ones. So 4 for 4, Human Salamandra, deploy Purify an ally only, and gain 2 coins for each of the statuses you remove. This actually has quite decent value if your opponent locks your guy, you unlock it and get 2 coins back. Usually they lock a spender. You can you spend those 2 coins. If something has a bunch of tags, say you play just something that already has a tag, say like you play something with shield, and then they lock it, you get 4 coins. Say they give something to you, and they give you a bunch of statuses. It can happen. It's just pretty good as a Purify card. The downside of this is that you can create it off of the location, the Salamandra Hideout, which is a pretty good location. So you don't always include this in the deck, but not every deck plays that. I think at 4 provisions, this is an alright card. Like if you want a Purify card in Devotion, it's not a bad one. Sure, it can't purify the opponent's units, which is a little annoying. You have Alibertus for that. But just at 4 provisions with the upside of if you don't need to purify, like just say, for example, the opponent hasn't locked your guys, usually you have a card with a unit, like a tag on it, say a Veil or a Doomed Token or something. If you're playing Firesworn, you can usually find a way to get those 2 coins from the Purify, or it's not playing for nothing like a Peller would if you have no targets, which is pretty decent. Savvy Huckster. This is the other bonded card. So 4 for 4, profit 1, damage any unit by 1, so 6 value there basically. Fee gain 1 vitality, and bonded increase the profit and damage by 1. This card is absolutely a terrible card. The value is just not there. The baseline value is not there. The problem with a lot of the bonded cards, a lot of the good things with the bonded cards is they have a really big payoff. So either they have a low value, say look at Illusionist, it has like Illusionist's immediate payoff can be really good too. The good bonded cards either have a big payoff or a good initial value. Look at the Solano Harpy, for example. If you get both Harpies off, you get a big payoff. You get the egg, right? The payoff here is a 2 profit, 2 damage unit. That's not good. It's bad. This thing, I think, just needs it just needs to have a higher base so that it's okay-ish to play on its own instead of atrocious. Like, the fact that it gives you total of 6 value, basically, from the profit and the deploy, it splits up. Like, if it was 2 damage or 2 profit, it'd be better. But the fact that it gives you 1 each is kind of annoying. It's a spender, but it gives himself vitality. So you can't just... Like, if you give himself 10 vitality, you're just going to kill it. It's not a good spender. It just doesn't have much going for it. Scapegoat is okay, though. Let's move on past that. I think it was intended this would hit Scapegoat with the 1 damage, for the record. But no one's ever going to do that. So Scapegoat is a 1 for 4, disloyal, profit 7, and bounty. Deploy, give self bounty. Let's say there's better ways to give 7 coins. This is the better way. This is a decent card in bounty. You give this to the opponent. It bounties itself, which is nice for you. And then it gives you 7 coins, which you can then spend to kill this or whatever else. It's pretty alright. There's generally decent other ways to get coins. There's decent other ways to put out bounty. Bountying a 1 only gives you 1 coin back. But the fact that it gives you 7 coins is a really nice setup. Sometimes you just want to start a round with a bunch of coins and play like a brawler or something in bounty, and this lets you do that. So I think it's all right. I don't think people play too much of it, but it's in consideration for bounty. Sometimes you want more coins, you consider putting this in to give you coins early. Next up, we have Sea Jackal. Sea Jackal's a 4/4, Human Pirate Tidecloak. Fee 2 boosts self by 2, Horde 7 boosts self by 3. So you got 3 for 2 spender when you've got the Horde on. That's pretty good. That's a pretty decent spending for a bronze 4/4. You get good value on this if you spent like 3. Like you get 7 points if you spent 3 times with this. That's all right. It's generally just like a good card to have as a spender. I think this card's fallen off a little bit. People start spending with other things. So between good and okay on this. But I think I'll leave it in good for now. It still does see play because it does have that Tidecloak category, and some decks want a spender that doesn't have a cooldown on it. It doesn't have a cooldown. So at the end of the round, you can play this and spend your coins. Something like that. I think it's pretty good. Yeah, we'll go with good. Next up, we have the Sewer Raiders. 4/4, Human Pirate Tidecloak. Deploy Horde 4, summon all copies from your deck. It's a 4/4 thinner. Horde 4 isn't very hard to do. It's pretty easy, actually. It just thins your deck. This is a great card. Great card. A lot of decks will play this. It's not as common as in some other factions because, a lot of factions like their 4/4 thinners are in every deck. Syndicate, not always, because the decks tend to be pretty consistent without needing it. But it's a really great help, and a lot of decks still do play it. So I think it's really going to fall in the excellent tier. A ton of decks do still play this, if not every single one. Next up, we have Shady Vendor. Profit 1, 4/5, Tribute 4 melee, create a 4 Vision Crime, Tribute 5 range, create a 5 Vision Crime. Generally, this is used to trigger King of Beggars because making crimes is good in decks that play like Intimidate or Line Pockets because you're getting an extra coin there, which gives it pretty good value. 4 coins to make a 4 provision card is usually worth, let's say you're making a random 4 provision card, it's going to be worth more than 4 points most of the time, so it's a good value on like a spend. It lets you see options. Really though, we're beating around the bush a little bit, as they say. It's in here. It's going to straight to top tier because it makes Open Sesame, and then you are enabling all the Acherontia decks and combo decks. It's because there's not many 5 version crimes. You very commonly see this or you see this. And both of those are incredibly potent deck-defining cards. And this can make both, which means it's really great. It's just really great. It's probably the best tribute bronze in the entire game. I keep clicking the wrong back arrow. I'm sorry for that, guys. I'm not going to edit them all out because I'll forget. But next up, we have Shakedown. This is a 3/4, 3-point, profit 3, boost by 3 for 4 provisions. This is not... We talked about dipping the Pontar, right? Like I said, this is the same value, right? Instead of boost, it's damage. Damage is better than boost. So if you ever going to consider dipping the Pontar, or this, if you're ever going to consider this, dipping the Pontar is better. It's just a better card to include because the damage is more premium than the point boost. So this is just going to fall in the meme tier. Yeah, okay, you make it off of Cleaver. We're not counting that. No one's ever going to put Shakedown in their deck. Like, there's no reason to. All the other crimes are better because Shakedown if you're playing a heavy crime-based deck, you'd only ever include Shakedown in a heavy crime deck. Heavy crime decks like to be in low or no units. This requires you to have a unit where all the damaged ones don't, so it doesn't synergize with that playstyle. It just doesn't have a spot. It's just not very good. What is pretty good, though, is Slander. Specifically for bounties, right? But like bounties is a decent deck. This is a crime, profit 3, place bounty. So you get 3 coins and put out bounty. The 3 coins usually let you spend down to kill the thing with bounty. It's just pretty good. It's a pretty decent card for bounty decks. Pretty good. I'll just stick it in here. I'm recording too long. We're making up words now. Sly Seductress. I love Sly Seductress. I love those thumbnail bait cards. 5/5. Fee 3, gain a shield. Human Agent Blind Eye. The Fee, you never want to use the Fee, but against some matchups you use it. So for example, if you're playing Raid Warriors, sometimes you're like, all right, we got to pay for the shield and hope we don't lose, even though it's a bad matchup. And whenever your opponent plays a unit, it boosts self by 1, so it's kind of a 1 point per turn engine. But with Bonded, when your opponent plays a card, it boosts self by 1. That's interesting, right? So if your opponent plays, I've had this situation, right, where you play like, you spam these guys out, you like 4 or 5, 6, 7 of them, and they play Golden Necker, and you're saying like, you play Golden Necker, that plays 3 cards, that's 4 cards, I'm getting 30 points. This Golden Necker doesn't do anything. Like, stuff like that. But generally, those decks are pretty meme. They're pretty low tier-ish stuff to spam them out. But like the Peaches, you do get 1 point. Or you do play 1 a lot to pull out with Madame Serenity. Yeah, this is definitely better. We'll play something good. I think this is... I thought about this earlier. It's definitely going in good. But the Peaches is better as the card because it's a generic engine. The Horde's pretty easy. This is less generic of an engine. It's 5 provisions. As they play specials, you don't get points. So yeah, I'm happy with this and good. This is an okay card. You can make decks based around it, which I think is a lot of fun, but those decks are pretty low tier, I'd say, or mid tier. No, not low tier. They're more mid tier, like not ideal decks, but they're pretty fun. Next up, we have Smuggle. Smuggle. 4 Persian Crime, Firesworn Crime, 3 Profit. It spawns a Flaming Rose Footman. This falls in the same category as the Shakedown and Dip in the Pontar. They both do 3 of something and then give you 3 coins. I think this one is pretty good, though. Like, Smuggle, along with Dip in the Pontar, definitely the better ones. We're going to give Smuggle good. The reason it's good is because, like I said, these crime decks tend to be low units, and this can be played in Firesworn to give you tags to trigger the effects of when you spawn guys. It's a Firesworn token, so it synergizes there. And in crime decks, you do spawn a token, which the opponent, like, sure, spawning a token is kind of nice, you get the 3 points. I think this is a pretty good card. I am between the okay and the good, because I do prefer Dip in the Pontar. But let's be real, I think they're both going to just go down here in okay. Yeah. Dip in the Pontar, I really like, but I don't think it gets played enough to really consider good. Yeah, I like this much better. This makes sense to me. Street Urchin. Talk about a card that's going to be in a tier just because of what it is. This is a spender that gives you 3 coins when you play it. People do play this. It's a Blind Eye, Human Blind Eye, 2 for 4, 3 Profit, So when I say, you hear people say like coins are worth more than 1 a lot of the time, like coins can be worth 2 or 3. Usually say like a coin's worth like 1.5 points or 2 or something. The more coins a card generates, the more you can say the coins are probably worth more than 1. If a card generates 1 coin, you can probably use a 1 spender. If a coin generates like 3 coins, you can probably get more than 3 value out of it from a fee or something, or a tribute. So this is a spender, boosts self by 1. It doesn't have the upside of the Tidecloak we saw earlier, the Sea Jackal, because there's no bonus points. But it can spend 1 at a time, which makes it spend down to 0 easier for things like Open Sesame. It just is a pretty decent spender. The value is not really there, right? Objectively, it's like a 5 for 4. Maybe you can say 6 if you count the coin for like something else. But the fact that it is a spender means it does see play. I think it's going to go in okay, though. I don't want to give this thing good. I think it's just okay. Like, it's a fine spender. I think this is a better spender. But sometimes you're like, oh, maybe I'll play this one because I'm having trouble spending to 0. I got like stuck at 1 coin. I need to spend like a 1 spender or something. But I think it's just generally going to be an okay card. Next up, we have Swindle. Swindle. This card got changed, I think, at some point. I think they added the second line of text. So it's a Crown Splitter crime. A lot of crimes here, as you can see. Profit 4 to 6, so pretty random. I don't like random. That's why I quit Hearthstone, however long ago that was. And for each allied Crown Splitter, increase the minimum by 1. So if you have a bunch of Crown Splitters out, it's guaranteed 6. I think I've only ever seen this played in lined pockets, so it's a 5 for 7 coins there. Generally, this is not the most common crime. I think it's a little bit not good. It is a way to generate a bunch of coins, though. Some decks just really need a bunch of coins, but I think the other crimes are generally a bit better. If you're playing something like Cleaver crimes, though, where you have Cleaver and a bunch of Crown Splitters, you guarantee you're getting like 7 coins each time, or 6 or 7 coins each time with line pockets. It's not too bad. I think overall, though, I'm going to stick it in niche. I think it's niche. It has some specific uses in decks that want to just get a lot of coins and are playing these cards. But I don't want to say it's like weak or bad because it can't get buffed. It's a 4th version special. So I think I'm pretty happy with putting it here. Tax Collector. Just a 4/4 human, no other tags. Every turn gets a coin. That's pretty good. Coins are pretty nice. 4/4 engine gives you coins. It's pretty good. It's a good card. Pretty simple. It's good. It's better in Jackpot because once you get the coin ceiling, it gives itself points, but just pretty good overall. Next up, we have... Oh, this guy's back. I hate seeing this card. Where? Faction Syndicate. Where is it? This is a Temple Guard or something. Yeah, it's Temple Guard. 3/4 human soldier Firesworn deploy, boost 3 adjacent units by 1. This is supposed to be like a wide payoff card or a value card. And the value payoff is 6/4 if you have 3 adjacent units. No. Just no. I don't think I have to explain this. It's just not good. Next up, we have... I got so distracted, I forgot. Oh, this guy. This guy's kind of interesting. It's a Tidecloak Ransackers. So 3/4, it's a human pirate Tidecloak. Deploy, do 2 damage. Deathblow, gain 2 coins. And Horde 5, trigger the Deathblow. So if you have 5... I think it's supposed to be like a value payoff card, right? So 7/4, because 2 damage, 2 coins. It's interesting, but Horde 5's a little high for it to be consistent. And its damage isn't enough for the Deathblow to be consistent. So you're mostly playing this for value. And as a value card, I think it's a little on the low end. No one really plays this. I'm debating between these two. This card needs a buff. Like, it has to be, it's just a value card. So the value has to be like, at least, it just has to have a base power. It just needs another base power. And then you consider it, because the Horde's a little high. Horde 5's not too easy, but the value is kind of there. It's a Tidecloak. Maybe make some kind of gang thing with it, but it's just not, it just doesn't have the value at the moment. It has to have a base power. We put him on here somewhere, right? Yeah, there he is. Next up, we have Treasure Huntress. Now, this is an interesting one. Treasure Huntress 4/5, human pirate Tidecloak, profit 3. So, like I said on the other guy, the cleric, 4 with 3 profits, already interesting. Because if it has an additional effect, and the effect's good, maybe you can do something with this. So, fee 3, so it can pay for its own fee. Infuse an ally with the end of your turn, gain a coin. So this was, I think, originally played mainly with the Search for Forgotten Treasure, because it would trigger your Bjornstottir. And then you've got her. I know I pronounced that wrong. And she gives you more coins, which triggers it. But really what you can do with it nowadays is just a good Golden Necker card. Because with the Townsfolk, this infuses coins, which gives you points on the Townsfolk, gives you coins on Bincy. You can infuse your Sausage Maker, which carries over the coin generation. It just has a lot of uses. And the fact that it's 3 coins is if you're not going to get value from the infuse, just 4 that gives you 3 coins isn't bad as a... Well, it's not ideal, but it's not a terrible bad situation thing. Sure, people can purify off the fee, sure that you can do whatever, but realistically, you're getting 1 coin back from this right away, so you only spent 2 coins if they purify this, and you can still infuse more stuff. You essentially have an engine, because it can make engines, and you've given another thing an engine, so they kind of have to kill this and the thing you infused. So this card's actually really good, specifically in the Golden Necker deck. But I think that is like one of the better Syndicate decks, so I'm going to put this up here. Next up, we have Vigilante. Only a few left here. So Vigilante here. Vigilantes. We took the S from this and gave it to the other guy earlier, the Mutant Killer. 4/4, Human Witch Hunter. Whenever a bounty is placed on enemy, damage it by 2. So it's an engine that pays off your bounties. It helps you get guys weaker so your bounties can kill them. Generally, bounties don't need this. And it's a little bit of setup. It's a little excessive setup, I think. I want to put it in weak. I think I'll put it in weak. The bounties, for bounty, you have to do setup with bounties and pay off with damage. This doesn't do enough damage to kill things on its own, which means you have another step of setup in there. And I think that just takes too much time. I can see some people say this is okay, but I don't think it. I think it's a little weak. And it's 4, so it dies easily for the amount of time it takes to pay off. Although it does give you 2 each bounty, you're generally not bountying every turn, because if you are, that means they didn't kill your Witchfinder or your Caleb, so you're already going to win. Then we have Witch Hunter Executioner. All right, pretty simple card here. So 5 for 5 with 2 profit. That's not a bad stat line right there. And then fee 1, give bleeding if it's bounty damage 1 instead. I'm going to give this the deck definer for bounties. I think bounties are decent, not decent to goodish. Like, they're kind of fun, especially Golden Necker ones are pretty good. The fact that it's just a damage spender for bounties. The fact that it spends 1 at a time as opposed to the gold cards, and it's just really nice. It gives you a little flexibility. You can kill stuff with it. If you need to, you can give out a bunch of bleedings to different units because you can spend your coins that way. It's just pretty decent to do that. But generally, it's very strong for killing stuff off with your bounties. The fact that it's a 5 when it comes down means you can boost it up pretty easily outside of removal range with even like 1 Conjurer's Candle charge or like a Blacksmith charge or something. So I do think this is pretty good. And we'll give it deck defining because it is like, this is the defining card for the gold or the bounty. Witch Hunter, on the other hand, is a 4 for 4 that gives out a bounty. No one really plays this one. Like, there are ways to put out bounty. There's usually enough without Witch Hunter. Generally, the crimes are better options to put out bounties because they can also do damage, which if there's a low card, it can kill it. This just puts out a bounty. It is a unit, so if you're going to play like a Tamara deck where you really want to take advantage of boosting all your units up, maybe there you can, but generally this is just weaker than the crimes and other ways to put out bounties, so it's going to be falling in the weak tier. Maybe if you had another base power or something, it could have an option, but it doesn't really. Then we have the back alley. Oh, yeah, that was the back alley one. This is... what are you called? Wretched Addict. I don't know this name. Wretched Addict's a 4 for 4, and if he's poisoned, he gets 2 points a turn. 2 point a turn bronze engines are amazing. This is a 4 provision engine, even more amazing, but it has to be poisoned. The deck doesn't really exist for this. Like, there really isn't a self-poison deck. And the problem with this as a self-poison card is we have Mutant. If you're actually going to play a self-poison deck, and we look at Mutant, it is way better because it gives you 4 points for the poison, right? Sure, it's only a 1 time. You have to poison again. The back alley or the addict, you have to poison 1 time. But this spreads the points out across multiple bodies, which is so good. It's so much better because the addict, it goes tall, right? The addict gets really tall and it already has a poison on him, so it's pretty vulnerable to other poisons. And 2 a turn for poisoning your own guy. Sure, you get 2 points a turn. What's the payoff here? Or what's the opportunity cost, I mean? We didn't poison the enemy. Okay, let's say we use this poison on what's like a pretty common number, 6 value. So there's probably a 6 power unit out there. You could most likely poison something bigger if you can, but say it's a 6 power unit and you poisoned it with whatever you could either poison it or this. That means you're going to get 3, half that value for this poison, let's say, that you put on this. So the poison would have been worth 3 if you killed that unit out there, which means that now it's not giving you 2 points a turn until you've made up for that as well. It's just not a good payoff to self-poison. And like I said, self-poison is not even a deck. Like, I think I've seen like 1 person ever play self-poison. It's just not a thing. So Wretched Addict is a pretty meme card. We could give it bad. No, we'll give it bad. Like, maybe if there's enough buffs to self-poison, this will be a decent payoff card, but I'm not seeing it, and we're going to stick it here and say that's it for this. Now, let's go over the cards real quick here. Syndicate's pretty polarizing. It has some amazing cards, doesn't it? These are all incredible. This is just deck defining for bounties, which is like one of the decks. These are all good. I think I'm going to throw one of the spenders up here. I'm going to throw this up here. Just because of how widely it's played across the faction. I think this is the most commonly played 4-person spender. It's in so many decks that I think I'll give this one excellent just for how many decks this fits into. The rest of these, though, I could see the argument for these 2 to being an excellent tier 2. Maybe Fistic does. I'm going to give Fistic the excellent. I think Fistic's super good. I don't think this is as good. If Fistic didn't exist, you wouldn't play this. But I think Fistic being a crime that gives coins, I'll give it this 2. I still see a decent amount. Maybe it's like more meta dependent, but I think we'll give it up here. Brawler, like I said, we're just rating this based on it being 4 for 5. If it gets buffed, which it will, it'll immediately be back in an excellent tier. These I'm all pretty happy with. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with these. I like how the tiers are only one line now. Maybe that's biasing me a little bit to this one. These are all right. Yeah, these are okay. I mean, this is good in bounties, really. Where did I put this? I think this was dip in the Pontar and moved it down. Maybe that's what I did. I might have thought this was dip in the Pontar and accidentally moved it down. This belongs next to Slander. These are all okay cards. Yeah, these are okay. Niche. Yeah, I think these are niche. Yep. Weak. I'm just checking like to see if a card doesn't fit in the tier with the other cards. These all kind of fit about together, I think. Give that one a bad, actually. Maybe we'll give this guy a weak. It had a base power, like a 4 power baseline potential engine with the damage might be interesting. No, this like it has to be buffed. Like some of these you can consider maybe, but like no, this is down here. By the way, the reason there's so many cards in the Syndicate's meme tier is just because if you take a look, this is Northern Realms, shared Northern Realms, shared Monsters. I don't know if I said that for those. Shared Skellige, shared Scoia'tael. They should have just been those faction cards. So they don't fit in here, other than Cleaver's muscle because of Cleaver. And then these are just so specific. Nilfgaard card, like these don't. And there's these ones. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with this tier list. Let me know what you guys think. Hopefully you enjoyed. It was pretty fun to do this one. We'll come back with the goals next, and we'll see you then.